it becomes very apparent how our consciousness is held in our energy body, because you can meet someone you've never met before, scan their chakras, and know things about them that they haven't told you. And you can find where they might have a kink in their consciousness that's holding them back from happiness. And you can work with them to unkink that. And it might bring tears and it might bring revelations and realizations. And you feel so much better on the other side, because this part of you that's designed to be in this fluid connection with everything is suddenly able to do that again.
Hi, it's Nicole Sharanam and welcome back to Connectedly. I'm so excited to share today's special guest who is a dear friend of mine. If you've ever wanted to learn more about consciousness and its relationship to happiness, if you've ever wondered why you were happy when you walked into a room and left feeling really anxious without any obvious reasons, or if you want to learn about how energy impacts your emotions and is consciousness held in our energy body, then today's for you. Just before I introduce our next guest, I'd love to invite you to please write a review for this podcast. Every time a review is posted, the algorithm gets a little nudge and it acknowledges us, and the light gets brighter, giving us the chance to pass the torch for women who are still stuck in darkness. So today's guest is Gayatri Anderson, whose passion is bridging the scientific and mystical understanding of human consciousness and how to uplift it. Her project, The Consciousness Connection, weaves scientific research with accessible spiritual tools to help people activate their consciousness and light up their lives. Apart from her work with The Consciousness Connection, Gayatri is currently completing her PhD on the psychology of unconditional love at Leeds Beckett University. She sees clients one-on-one and works as a mindset and leadership consultant specializing in consciousness science. There's some mind-blowing wisdom that's about to be dropped. So join us as we talk all things happiness, connection, consciousness, and energy. So let's get straight into it. Please welcome Gayatri. Hi, Gayatri. Thank you so much for being here. I can't even tell you how happy I am to have you here and to celebrate you and your wisdom and what you have to offer to the world with this community of women that we have. To introduce you, the first thing that comes to mind is I want to share your wisdom and your calmness. And when I think of you, I think of when I was a kid and I had boundless joy. That was this childlike joy that just was easy, it was simple, it was right there and tangible, and it was with me all the time. And when I am with you, I feel that. So I just want to say thank you so much for being so beautiful and wonderful. And I can't wait to get into this interview to share that feeling with other people.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's such a delight to be here.
Gayatri, tell us first of all what you do, and I think maybe a little bit about your childhood.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up basically between these two families. My parents separated when I was very young. And so I had one family that was a very, very spiritual family, and one family that was more scientifically based family. And so my mom started on a spiritual path pretty much when my parents separated, kind of as a result really of the kind of chaos of that. Like, it's such an upheaval in anybody's life, a separation. And she came in from a path of no spirituality really whatsoever. She had this big healing experience. She recovered instantaneously from an illness that had been going on for 3 months through having a healing with someone. And she just had never experienced anything like that. Her heart opened. She had all this joy that she'd not had in months, if not years. And she kind of dedicated her life in that moment to studying that. And so as a kid, you're really open, as you said in the introduction, you're really open to the magical and the joyful, and you're really open to love. So my experience of that was that, she started coming home with this magic. It was like having magic dust come home with your mama. And she started talking about, meditation and connection inside, and maybe angels here and there, or crystals, or we started learning energy healing together, and she would teach me little bits that she was learning, and she gradually became a teacher of various modalities, and she would want to learn everything. So she would invite the senior shaman or the senior guru or the this or the that over to our house to stay with us, and she'd get a group of people together so that the shaman could teach them. But then we'd have shaman at the dinner table, and so I'd be this kid like asking questions and just having this sheer joy at having this curtain opened to this other reality, to the reality that most people seem to be living in. And so for me as a kid, it was like, wow, this makes so much sense, and it makes more intuitive sense than the rest of the world made. So I kind of just really wanted to immerse myself and learn everything that she and all of her teachers had to offer. And then meanwhile, I had my dad and his family, and it was like having these opposite realities in these opposite households, that both worked. But my dad's version of spirituality was really more to do with extreme sports and jumping off mountains on skis and like flying planes with no engines. And so learning with him the value of the physical world and science and logic and rationality, and with my mom this like magical world of spirituality and love and joy and expansion, was a really fascinating way to grow up.
It sounds fascinating. Almost feel like you could make a movie about that. And just the image of almost, you as a kid, I can just imagine having dinner with all these guests around the table. I think any of us would give our, right arm to be able to have those experiences, and wow, what a blessing for you to be able to have that as a kid, to be able to take on so much wisdom so quickly.
I think the other thing that was going on for me was that, like any kid from a split family, there were the gifts of that in terms of, these two sets of life skills and life lessons and different types of magic. But there was also the pain of feeling a bit split. And I think for me, spirituality was the balm that I needed for that. And so there was something about being quite young, but knowing that this spirituality was going to be the balm that kind of reassembled that, or made these things that seemed separate and kind of irreconcilable able to be woven into a new kind of a thing that was even more beautiful than what I had expected would be life, with your family being in one place and together. So it was a real gift in that way too.
And I imagine that's also something that you were able to take with you for the rest of your life, trying to balance both sides, these complete opposites, right?
So, yeah, definitely. So as an adult, I guess because I grew up mainly with my mom, and I started teaching her work quite young, started teaching meditation, and I just witnessed all these people transforming so quickly. Like people would come with depression and anxiety and just be transformed and liberated and free to live different lives. And even people with all kinds of different illnesses, like physical illnesses, experiencing healing. And then loving my dad so much and wanting to have conversations with him about my whole life, not just the bit that he understood. So I went off and studied psychology and different forms of science, particularly the science of consciousness, because I really felt like, even though these worlds seem like they're totally different from each other, it's one world, it's one universe. And the gifts from both are parts of the beauty of the one big thing. And so the fact that there's not a scientific language to explain why these people are having these incredible results is only a matter of not yet, because science should be about connecting with and explaining, the phenomena of the universe. And this was phenomena that we were experiencing. And so it felt really good to kind of go off and study that and learn of ways to talk about and also understand this in a way that could be communicated to people who are not spiritual, Because I think spirituality is often seen as something separate from the real world, whereas for me, it just is the real world, if you see what I mean. And so learning how to encompass it all has been really fun.
I think that's an interesting point. What is spirituality to you? Let's elaborate on that, because I think that is the word spirituality scares so many people.
Yeah, such a great point. Such a great topic. So I think it's really different for so many people, but one of the massive distinctions I think is that, religion is something that is a bit outside in. And so it's a set of beliefs, a system for living that you learn from the outside, and you follow that path, and you're with a group of people also following that path, and there's quite a lot of rules and regulations and things. Spirituality, I think, refers more to an inner experience. And so your outer experience of religion or of a particular path can shape your inner experience, but your inner experience is yours. So I said that my dad was not really into spirituality. He wouldn't call it that, but we've had chats where he talks about being in a glider, a plane with no engine, and just being in nature and having only his skill and the controls of the aircraft between him and death, basically, but also only a tiny little bit of fiberglass between him and nature, and how sacred that is and what a profound experience that is, and it makes his mind go still and it kind of expands his. And so that is a type of spirituality. It doesn't have to look a particular way, or be a particular thing. My PhD supervisor, Steve Taylor, he has spent his whole life, well, not his whole life, his whole academic career, really interested in awakening experiences. And it's really fascinating hearing him talk about them, because you would think that they would happen in these contexts of going off and meditating in a cave for thousands of years, not thousands, but it feels like thousands. But actually, people have these experiences with no sense of connection to anything spiritual that they would say, just in nature, or, you know, whatever. Maybe sometimes after big calamities happen in their lives, people sometimes have these spontaneous experiences where they feel connected with everything. They feel a sense of going through their normal reality into this expanded consciousness, for want of a better word, where there's just this peace and joy and maybe insights about their problems that are coming from a bird's eye view rather than from the enmeshment in it. And that is a spiritual experience or a self-transcendent experience, but it doesn't have to come with any dogma or any particular shoulds or rules, which I like about spirituality.
Yeah, I love that. I think having your own version of spirituality to what relates to you, like as in your dad's experience, I think that's fantastic. It's so relatable, isn't it? It doesn't mean that it has to be what this textbook says, but rather it's how you interpret it. And you've tapped on a word that obviously is dear to this podcast, which is connection. And I would love to understand a little bit more about connection, what you think connection is what's your definition of connection, and how that relates to consciousness as well. Let's kind of unravel that a little bit.
Yeah. Okay, this is total passion area we're getting into. Like, I feel like I need to come with like a warning clause about this, but because yeah, the work that I do at the moment is actually branded in a bubble called the consciousness connection, because of exactly that alignment between consciousness and connection, which you and I have talked about often. So from my spiritual experience as well as from my academic study of consciousness, what I'm fascinated by is that consciousness is not what we're taught it is. So we seem to learn in our society that our consciousness is something that comes out of our brain. And that seems like a really normal statement. Like, no one would bat an eyelid. People would think, well, yeah, tell us something interesting, Gayatri. Whereas actually, what's being revealed in consciousness science is that the idea that consciousness comes from the physical matter of our brain is not one, it's not a hypothesis that fits all of the data. So, for example, a lot of people are having near-death experiences, and there's a lot of books coming out recently of, neuroscientists who didn't believe in anything other than the material body producing consciousness, having experiences where their brain completely dies. There's no measurable activity whatsoever in the brain. You should be dead. And yet they have these really rich, incredible, colorful, flavorsome experiences of consciousness where they learn things. Some of them are having experiences where they meet their ancestors, right, in these near-death experiences, and they learn things that they didn't know about their genetic heritage, which they're then able, when they come back and they regain their health, they're able to verify that fact, but they didn't know it before. Like that is that's consciousness, but the brain is dead. So what is that? It's hanging out the side of the theory that our brain produces consciousness. So from a spiritual perspective, that makes total sense. And the framework that my mom teaches, which I absolutely love, is a model that says that our consciousness is not only what we're thinking, but it's also our energy body. It's also our physical body. It's our nervous system. It's our cellular memory in the body. It's our spirit and it's our soul. And also it's this infinite connected oneness. And that could sound quite trippy. Science hasn't kind of gotten to the point where it's differentiated in those ways. But what the scientific world is saying is maybe consciousness is actually primary to matter. So, like how in the universe you have mass and gravity, and the space and time are just there. You don't try to nut them down into more primary parts, they just are. They're saying maybe consciousness is part of that primary nature of reality. And some scientists call that information rather than consciousness. But it's like every little teensy weensy atom or subatomic particle, the teensiest ones, are made of this information that makes that subatomic particle know how to behave and how to link up with other ones and how to behave in that way, and how to, gets bigger and bigger until it gives rise to people like us. There's lots of theories. I'm not sure, kind of like I said, it should come with a warning. I'm not sure how much to go into, but because I do get excited about it. But if people are interested, they could look up integrated information theory. But there's even one particular neuroscientist who spent most of his life trying to prove that the brain is, the physical neurons of the brain give rise to every single experience that we have in consciousness. And he eventually decided that actually, even if there's correlations between those neurons firing and particular experiences in consciousness, it doesn't explain how the physical brain is creating that. And so he's now come over to this idea of panpsychism, which is this idea of consciousness being just a part of the way the universe is. So what does that mean for us in terms of connection? I guess it means that there's fields of consciousness that are held in quantum, rather than just consciousness being a separate thing inside of our head. It's not, our consciousness is not just in here. And this explains why sometimes you can have contagious consciousness, and you can walk into a room and you are feeling fine, and then suddenly you're feeling very stressed. And it's like, whoa, what's just happened? I'm good. Like, am I good? Yeah, I think I'm good, but now I'm really stressed, because you just walked into a room of stressed people, and you haven't even had a chance for your conscious brain to receive the information that they're stressed, but you already know, because your consciousness is in your energy, not only in your brain. So there's this innate connection that we have with others that comes through the fact that our consciousness is just not discrete like that. It's blurring around the place.
I feel like we need like one of those mind blown moments, right? Like it is huge, because I think having this conversation with lots of different people, the reaction that often you'll get is, but you'll get kind of a blank stare, because that is really hard to comprehend, that it's not, because often we walk around this life thinking we are just this. I am just this, and I'm not connected to everything. It's just me, which is such a fascinating topic. I'm right there with you. I would love to know, before we get into the happiness piece and how that relates to connection, I think I really want you just to quickly talk about the consciousness connection and what it is that you do through the consciousness connection.
Okay, so the consciousness connection is about the fact that through our consciousness, we're connected to everything. So through our consciousness, we're connected to the people that we love because we're digesting our relationships through our emotions and through our thoughts. And then we're responding to the people that we love through our emotions and our thoughts. So definitely in relationships, but also our connection with the earth is through our consciousness. You can do practices that make you feel much more grounded on the planet, much more connected. Our connection to the divine or the infinite or the limitless or inspiration, all of that comes through consciousness. But that sounds very kind of general, and in a way it is. And so in the consciousness connection, we're looking at these 5 different parts of our consciousness and how those connect us, or how kinks or clogs in those parts of our consciousness can disconnect us from ourselves, from the universe, and from each other. So, particularly the energy body is a passion of mine at the moment because when I see clients one on one, it becomes very apparent how our consciousness is held in our energy body. Because you can meet someone you've never met before, scan their chakras, and know things about them that they haven't told you, and you can find just through touching someone's energy body where they might have a kink in their consciousness that's holding them back from happiness or from connecting better with their partner or from, knowing what their purpose is. And you can work with them to unkink that. And it might bring tears and it might bring revelations and realizations. And you feel so much better on the other side because this part of you that's designed to be in this fluid connection with everything is suddenly able to do that again. And it's just the difference between, like, it's a chalk and cheese kind of difference in how you live your life. Yeah, great. So I think it's that thing that I was talking about from more of a scientific perspective before, about consciousness maybe doesn't just arise from our brains. So say it's floating around in fields. That kind of explains this notion that, Elizabeth Gilbert talks about this a lot, that you receive ideas sometimes. Artists who write music or that kind of thing, they'll often talk about, I didn't write the song just started playing itself through me and I kind of caught it. So this idea that consciousness is more fluid than just coming from our brains kind of explains a lot of these things. So then how is it, so if consciousness is this limitless infinite thing that the whole universe is maybe made of, then how is it that we as humans have this separate kind of consciousness? And so of course we have the physical part of our consciousness, which is our nervous system and our brain, and we need that. So that's kind of like how to watch TV we need a television set. So the brain is kind of like the receiver in this model of consciousness. And so if there's a problem with the television set or if there's a problem with the brain, the consciousness kind of won't come through. But for example, memory, they've never found in the brain where memory lives exactly. They've found parts that if you damage it, memory goes, but not where memory is stored. And so through the Vedic system, which is an ancient Indian system, they've always had this notion that human beings have energy bodies. And so there's an aura or a bubble of energy that we live in that's kind of like, what keeps my energy body separate from your energy body. And then there's also a set of chakras that are like, each one is like a filing cabinet for a different part of our consciousness. So for example, the crown chakra is about, our capacity to meditate, to access higher consciousness, to have inspiration and ideas. The base chakra is about safety, connection to the earth, physical health, groundedness, practicality. And you've got this range all the way through. The heart chakra is about love and relationships, but also about the health of the physical heart. And it's interesting because in medicine they talk about the phenomena of people dying of a broken heart. Elderly couples, when their spouse dies, they often will die quite soon after. They literally call it dying of a broken heart. If you look at that through the chakral system, the heart chakra is looking after both heart health and love health, and so the grief or the damage to in the love department, it affects the chakra's capacity to look after its physical component, and the heart fails. So it's this way of our consciousness being organized through the body. And another example is, if you get stressed or nervous, you might feel that in your guts, in your belly. And there's a chakra there that's all about your concept of self, like self-awareness, self-consciousness. Is anybody judging me? Is all in that area, and that's where we feel that part of emotion. And I guess so in my line of work, what I see is that, our energy body, like our nervous system, it stores things from our ancient past in this life, but also recent things. Something might have happened yesterday that was stressful in this way or that way, or, an interaction with a colleague or with a child that has put something in our energy body that maybe is not ours. Without knowing that we have an energy body, we could kind of carry that emotion around for ages, and it can kind of squish us, and it can dim our light, and it can make life feel a little bit heavier than it could feel. So in the consciousness connection, there's a lot about learning how to know that you have this going on, and then also how to clean it. Something that has been occurring to me recently is how much like Hogwarts it is, really. Like, if you think about Harry Potter and how he was magical all along. He was magical before he went to Hogwarts. But before he knew about his magic, he was blowing stuff up. When he got emotional, his cousin ended up in the snake pit, which is not such a good thing, because he doesn't know how to use his magic. And then Hagrid comes along and says, "You're a wizard, Harry," and takes him off. And he goes, "Oh my God, I have magic. I didn't even know I had it. And now let me learn how to use it." So from my perspective, growing up with these things being as tangible as a table to me, it's really beautiful watching people realize, "Oh my God, there's so much more to me. I have so much more power and more capacity than I ever knew I had. And I've been kind of driving a Ferrari without a license. And now let me learn how to operate that for joy rather than getting operated by it."
Gosh, I love that. We're all wizards. I like that you've given us license to, to
Yes.
all be wizards. That's fantastic. I wanna ground this down then into the theme of what we love to talk about at Connectedly, and that's happiness. What is happiness to you first of all? Define happiness in your words.
Well, I think for me, joy has been something that's actually coming up a lot in my personal practice, but also in my research, as something that can just rise up inside of you, kind of like helium in a balloon, and that your heart just lifts. So for me, I think when I'm in that state, my heart's really open. There's no self-consciousness. I don't feel separate from nature or from other people or wondering what I should and shouldn't. I just feel like, sorry, a gesture sometimes speaks a thousand words, but there's a surrender in it, there's a trust in it, there's a safety in it, and there's a spark in it. And I think for me, when I'm in that, I feel more myself than ever. And I notice also that when I'm in that place, the universe responds. So it usually generates some sense of flow where the synchronicities you need are there right when you need them.
Wow, that's amazing. And then off the back of that, in terms of happiness and consciousness, A lot of people are going through life. A lot of our listeners are women and mums, and they're working very fast and hard, and there's a lot of chores, a lot of things to do. And we're all trying to take on pieces of advice like, self care, boundaries, got to do this, got to do that, got to look after myself, got to try and still find happiness. How are we pulling all this together?
Yeah, look, so there's so many things. And as you say, we don't want to be overwhelming with it, because actually sometimes the simplicity with happiness is a real key. I know from my life, one of the times that I came back into happiness after having a tricky physiological like I had an illness that led to some depression. And even though it was a neurological illness that caused the depression, self-compassion was a simple thing that was able to pull me out of that right in that moment. Like from the time of initiating the self-compassion practice to feeling that helium start to lift me out of that sense of depression was kind of only a couple of hours, maybe a day. Because I think sometimes we're just so hard on ourselves. And sometimes we can start a spiritual path or a path of personal development and learn all of these tools that are supposed to nourish us, but then use them like whips and, you know, see it as, well, here's more deficit that I have, where there's this big gap between here and there. And I think for me, self compassion accepts everything as it is, says, this is the learning journey that I'm on, and this challenge that I'm in is going to become part of my magic so I can love myself now and work towards where I'm going. So that would be one superpower tool. But then also, I couldn't kind of not say also that cleaning our chakras, cleaning our energy body, cleaning the matter of our consciousness can be another huge unburdener. And you can do it really quickly in like 10 minutes a day. And it can help you to be open to some of the natural joys of the universe in a different way.
Wonderful. So you mentioned self-compassion. How do we practice self-compassion? How, we can't just go, I'm going to flick the switch and I love myself now. What's what's some practical tips or tools that you could give us?
So, practical tips and tools. Firstly, I would love to recommend a website that is self-compassion.org, which has a whole range of tips and tools. But essentially, the easiest thing that I could say is, how can I make my mind talk to myself as if I was a friend? So, say you are going on a date and it's date number two, and the date rings you and says, I can't come, blah, 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 whatever. They stand you up. If it was a friend, how would you talk to that person? Like, how would you comfort them? How would you reassure them versus how would you talk to yourself? So with us, it's like, oh my God, they must hate me because of this and this and this, and I've gained weight and I'm not very funny and da 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 da. Whereas if it was a friend, we would say, oh, yeah, they must have had something else on. They're missing out on the best thing ever. You're gorgeous. You've got nothing to worry about. How about we watch a movie or go and like have a bath and like whatever it is, we'd be so different with a friend to how we are with ourselves. And so self-compassion mainly is this skill of treating ourselves with that same kindness that we treat everybody else with.
Beautiful. Be your own best friend. So nice. If somebody wants to access their consciousness and they want to be more aware of that consciousness, how do we achieve that?
So, an easy way to start is often through really simple chakra-based meditations. So, yeah, there are all kinds of little meditations that you can find. You can certainly find some through our organization, and there are lots of others who do them, where you're taught how to bring your awareness into the various places where your chakras are connected into your nervous system. And so you start to feel like it just enhances your self-awareness, and like you say, your awareness of your own consciousness and what the flotsam and jetsam is that's in there. And you might learn techniques to breathe through that and release certain things, and to breathe in light. And sometimes it's enough just to use metaphor with this, because another way to talk about energy would be to say that that's our unconscious, and that our unconscious, even without taking the energy body totally out of it, which sometimes I would do talking to more academic or scientifically minded people. There's so much research in the sphere of psychotherapy and that kind of thing about the power of metaphor and visualization and the use of imagination to shift how our unconscious is holding our relationship to our life and to the world around us. And then when we shift that unconscious relationship that we're holding, our whole experience shifts. It's like night and day. So we can kind of learn how to tune in to what our imagination is telling us is going on in our consciousness, and shift those stories and those visualizations. It sounds more complicated than it is actually.
So you don't have to be a wizard to learn this stuff. You can be your average Joe off the street that knows nothing about chakras or anything. You could, yeah, be a beginner.
Absolutely, you can absolutely be a beginner. And you can start really kind of as a passenger, like in these meditations, you kind of sit and listen. Like, I think people are quite scared of the word meditation because we think, oh my God, I can't make my mind go quiet for half an hour. But what if it's 10 minutes and you don't have to make your mind go quiet? You can just sit and close your eyes and have this nurturing thing that's guided for you, where you are kind of watching as your consciousness, you know, notices and releases different things. Your self-knowledge grows just naturally. It's almost like an accident that you end up growing your awareness of your consciousness. And I love that it's actually so natural to us, but just forgotten. Like, it's like imagination is something that I think is seen as children's stuff, but actually our imagination is the language of our unconscious. It's the language of the energy body. And so as soon as we give it permission to start coming back, it just gives us this wealth of information. And in my experience, learning about how to perceive these things, the difference between not being able to and being able to was this realization of, oh, it was that thing that I'd just relegated over here and turned off my acknowledgement of, and now I'm just bringing it into the center. So it's a lot easier than you would ever think it would be.
Gayatri, I'd love to know, you obviously do a lot and you've got your PhD and everything else that you're going through at the moment, but I would love to know what you're most passionate about at the moment. What project are you kind of working on? Is there something coming up you want to share? What's your thing at the moment?
Well, I think my thing at the moment is, in general, this curriculum of consciousness for people who don't necessarily need to be wizards, but still have magic that's easily accessible inside. So the consciousness connection is this body of work that goes through really simply how to work all of these different parts of consciousness, and how to upskill people into this. What I notice is that people who come through this work, which actually my mom and I created, they just become kind of resonant, and there's a natural peace and harmony, and they still have challenges, but they're able to take those challenges almost like in a taekwondo move and kind of flip them into working for them. And even though, someone said to me recently about this work, they said, this is the most challenging time of my life, and that's why I found you, is because I'm in the most difficult thing that I've ever been through in my life. And she said, but because of this work, I'm also weirdly the happiest I've ever been in my life, and have the most love going on that I've ever had in my life. And that's it. It's like, in terms of my passion, that life is supposed to be, all the things that it is in terms of its hot and cold and sweet and sour, but we can have like liberation and authenticity and connection and joy anyway. Yeah, I think that would be my passion at the moment.
That's so nice and juicy, isn't it? That concept, because I think a lot of people walk through life thinking, I've got all these hardships, so how do you expect me to be happy? Like, come on.
Yeah. Yeah, and without being uncompassionate or discompassionate, whatever that word is, because sometimes it is really hard, and it's also okay to be sad, and it's also okay to be angry or to feel powerless. It's more like, how do we feel it and then feel like we can also move through it if we want to?
Which is actually a really great segue, because I have a question from one of the women in our happiness club. We call it a happiness club. It's where women come together online and we network and talk about everything. And one of the questions was, if we are caught up in anger or resentment towards someone, it could be our partner or a child or a business or like a boss, for example, how do you move through that toward happiness?
So there's some conceptual things that are easy to say and take just a bit of practice to do, I think. So one thing would be, how do I find acceptance? And part of that for me in those situations, usually anger is saying there's been some kind of injustice, there's been some kind of crossed boundary. And so when I'm in a situation where I can't uncross the boundary, like it's not in my power to push out whatever has come in, kind of thing, then what I need from myself usually is to know that I back myself, to know that I know what my reality is and what I'm worthy of and what I deserve, and that I'm here, and that even if reality hasn't given me that, I still know that I'm worthy of that. And that helps me, I think, to accept, that person is out of order, or that situation is out of order, but I don't have to give it my power. I don't have to let it take me over. I don't have to even convince that person that I'm right, because in my being, I know that I'm right for me. So there's actually, and I would also do lots of forgiveness work, which has a really beautiful energetic effect. But sometimes we're not ready for forgiveness yet. We have to feel it first and accept it and feel it. But there's actually a really great practice that I do sometimes. And I wondered, would that be okay to just run a little practice and we could do an experiment?
Oh, so good.
Cool. So we can do this with anger, but also with anything that we feel like we've given our power to. So I use this sometimes with anxiety as well, where I feel like something's happened in my life and I can't stop thinking about it, about how unjust it is, or rah, 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 or how scared I am that maybe I've done the wrong thing, or da, 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 like any of those kinds of things. So if you'd like to just close your eyes, and what we're going to do is use a metaphor of calling our energy back from that situation and cutting from it. So just close your eyes and just take a few breaths to center in yourself. And you might take your awareness to the center of your chest to just connect with you right now. And if there is anger or fear or anxiety, just be with that. Hello, that's okay. I'm here with you. And then think about the situation or the person or organization, institution, whatever the thing is that's causing the infringement upon your consciousness. You know, that sense of pressure that something's pushing in or pulling you out of yourself because you can't stop thinking about it. Think of that thing and imagine that, metaphorically speaking, there are all these cords of attachment between you and that thing, maybe like olden day telephone wires between us and that thing. And what we're going to do is we're going to cut these telephone wires. And what I like to do is actually use my arms, because it's really fun and satisfying, like samurai swords. And so you breathe in, you might want to open your eyes for a demonstration. You breathe in and you go cut, 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 like this. It's really fun. And you release as you cut, and you cut these cords, and imagine that they're just breaking, and that thing just has no power to pull or push your energy anymore. So you can do it a couple of times. Cut, cut, cut. I say cut out loud. And then I breathe in and I go, whew. Sound effects optional. And I might say or think, I release the energy of that thing from my mind, body, and energy field now. And breathe in and imagine lots of light streaming in through your consciousness and pushing out anything that's not yours. And feel the power in it. Just this metaphorical practice. We're just using our imagination. If you like, we're using real energy through our imagination, breathing in and releasing. Great. Excellent. And then say, and I call my energy back. And so just intend that you call your energy back from that thing. So, what I do, using metaphorical language again, is I imagine a big, blazing, shining sun between me and the thing or the person. And I imagine that all of the energy that I've invested in that thing through all of my worries and my second guessing and my overthinking and my neurotic, all of that, I imagine that all of that energy comes back towards me, but it goes through the sun. So it stops in the sun, and in the sun, imagine the sun is just blazing purity, freedom, love, grace, whatever it is that you think would be helpful. It's your imagination, your metaphor. You go for it. And imagine that this energy of yours is just cleansed of all of that worry, all of that fear. It's cleansed of all of the anger. It's cleansed of all of the stuff of the other person. Just cleansed and restored, and then call it back to you when it's clean. And you can say or think, I call back my energy. I re-empower myself. I know I'm enough. I reclaim my wholeness, my enoughness, my power, and my spirit. So be it. And breathing in and hold and let that expand through you and feel that sense of kind of satisfaction, I want to say, as if you're now shining like the sun. And just feeling inside that no matter what anybody else or anything else does, you are you. And no one can take that away from you. You have permission to be fully yourself. And then when you're ready, just opening your eyes. Great. How's that feeling? As my one mouthpiece for the audience here.
Yeah, look, that was amazing. It you said satisfied and I got that straight away, but I also had so much freedom and like almost like doing a tap dance, like woohoo, I'm free.
Yeah, it's like liberation. And it's like sometimes we think that because that person is carrying on like a who's he what's it, I can't be myself and I can't be free because you're being oppressive. But actually it's like, oh, wait a second, I'm me. Like it's such a strange shift in consciousness to realize, oh, I have this freedom anyway.
Like my my happiness and my connection to myself and the world around me isn't driven by anyone else.
Totally, totally. I actually, a long time ago, I wrote a song about this called Happy for No Reason. And it just, the story of it was that I was in India on a retreat that my mom was running with some beautiful people. We were doing these energy practices every day, and it just felt so shiny and radiant. And then I got really sick, and I was in bed, and I couldn't go to the retreat where all my friends were. And I was like, just, when there's just, you're just clogged in all of your nose, and you can't speak, and your throat's sore, and your chest, and you're coughing. And I woke up in this total like bleh of illness. And I just felt in my heart this joy, this just total radiant, like resonating joy. And I thought, well, that's weird. And it felt like the joy wrote this song, Happy for No Reason. And it's all about how, if you throw a rock at the sun, nothing's going to happen except that the sun's going to turn that rock into its own light. And there's something about, there is this unconditional potential for joy, regardless of what's happening. And we don't have to feel that. We can totally feel angry and upset if we want to, but sometimes we can have these glimpses and it's life-changing.
I love the sound of having joy through snot. That sounds amazing.
That's right. Sorry, it's a bit graphic.
But so true. Like it goes to show you that you can, even with those things going on, there's more than that. There's more than that. Yeah, I really love that. What we might do is a quick fire round where we just ask a couple quick questions and you give us some quick answers. And if it's okay with you, I would love to share a link to your song in the show notes so that people can find that song.
Yeah, sure, 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 sure. That'd be lovely.
Okay. Okay. So, what's your favorite book? It could be just at the moment or forever. It's your call.
Oh, one of my favorite books at the moment is Spiritual Science by Steve Taylor. Yeah, just beautiful science with stories and heart about all of this stuff.
Best advice about happiness you've ever been given?
Hmm. I think that it doesn't have to be contingent on anything or anybody, that it can arise from within.
What are you trying to unlearn?
Oh, I think I'm trying to unlearn self-consciousness with a self-conscious giggle at the end of that answer.
That's honesty in its best. If you could wave a fairy wand, what would you change about the world?
I would change the illusion of separation. I would change, yeah, this illusion that we're all like marbles in a box, bouncing around by ourselves, fending for ourselves and separate from the things that impact us, and help people realize that we're one with everything. We have more power to make a difference than we know.
And one practical tool that we could put into practice today to help us achieve more happiness.
I think give love. I think when we start to consciously give love to the people that we meet, so whether it's the grocery store person or a taxi driver or someone that you're running past in the park, to really start seeing people as blobs of love, that you have this joy to witness that person in that moment as love on legs and send love to them. There's something about that, speaking of connection, that connects us with the other person. It pops us out of our own little self bubble, and it starts to build more and more filaments of love into our heart. Our heart chakras pop open, and that's the gateway to joy.
That's wonderful. I love that. But more love. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. I know you're very busy doing a lot of things and making the world better, which we're very grateful for. So thank you for sharing that wisdom, for breathing the joy and the love into our day just through this interview. Thank you so much. And I'll put all the links and everything in the show notes so everyone can find you.
Great. Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure, and so beautiful that you're doing what you're doing. So I'm looking forward to hearing all of the other talks. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Gayatri. Thanks so much for being with us today. Isn't Gayatri just amazingly gorgeous inside and out? She's just beautiful. So here's the takeaways. Spirituality doesn't need dogma or strict rules. It's about finding a personal interpretation of spirituality that resonates with you. It's an inner experience. Consciousness does not solely arise from the physical brain, and it's not limited to the brain, but encompasses very aspects of our being, including our energy body, our spirit, and our soul. Be your best friend. Treat yourself with the same kindness and compassion you would offer a friend in challenging situations. And this can be a powerful tool for shifting your mindset and nurturing your well-being. A simple chakra-based meditation can be an accessible entry point for anyone, even beginners, to begin exploring their consciousness. So these practices can really enhance self-awareness and provide valuable insights into finding harmony and peace. So don't forget to join our growing community of women who are tired of chasing unrealistic happiness goals in the Women's Happiness Movement on Facebook. Until next week, so much love to you, and remember, you are worthy, You are loved. Just keep going.